Chrysler has built some absolutely insane cars over the decades. I'm talking about production cars that actually made it to dealerships, cars you could walk in and buy with real money. From a turbine-powered sedan that could run on perfume to a sports car that was secretly a Mercedes in disguise. These are the 10 weirdest production cars Chrysler ever made. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll understand why Chrysler has always been the wild card of American automakers. Some of these cars were ahead of their time, others were just plain bizarre, but they all share one thing. Somebody at Chrysler thought they were good enough to actually build and sell to the public. If you love weird automotive content like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We've got tons more bizarre car content coming your way, and you won't want to miss it. Let's count down the madness. 10 Chrysler Point Cruiser Convertible, 2005 to 2008. Starting at number 10, the PT Cruiser Convertible. The regular PT Cruiser was already polarizing with its retro 1930s hot rod styling. But Chrysler decided to make it even weirder by chopping the top off. The convertible version launched in 2005 and immediately looked like an automotive identity crisis. The retro proportions that kind of worked on the hardtop became absolutely bizarre without a roof. The car looked unfinished, like someone had started building it and then just stopped. Production numbers were predictably low. Chrysler only made about 25,000 points Cruiser convertibles over its 4-year run, compared to over 1.3 million regular PT Cruisers. The convertible mechanism was a traditional soft top, which somehow made the whole thing look even more awkward. But here's the thing, despite looking weird, it was actually practical. You got decent cargo space for real seats and genuine open-air driving. It was just unfortunate that it looked like a 1930s gangster car that had been in a terrible accident. 9 Dodge Caliber SRT4, 2007 to 2012. Number 9 is the Dodge Caliber SRT4, and this car perfectly represents everything that was confusing about 2000s automotive design. Dodge took their compact Econobox, a car designed to be invisible and practical, and tried to turn it into a legitimate performance machine. The SRT4 packed a 2.4-liter turbocharged engine producing 285 horsepower and 265 lb-ft of torque. Those are genuinely impressive numbers that could compete with a Subaru WRX or Volkswagen GDI. The problem was everything else about the car. The styling was schizophrenic, massive hood scoop, aggressive body cladding, a rear spoiler that looked like it was borrowed from a much larger car, and proportions that seemed confused about what they wanted to be. The interior was full of hard plastics and cheap materials that reminded you this was still fundamentally an economy car. But the weirdest part was the driving experience. The engine was actually pretty good, responsive, powerful, and reasonably reliable. The chassis, however, was still based on the regular Caliber, which meant it handled like a tall, tippy economy car rather than a proper hot hatch. It was fast in a straight line but felt nervous and unpredictable in corners. Only about 9,000 SRT4S were made over its production run, making it something of an oddity today. It represents Dodge's attempt to create a performance car on a budget platform. And while the idea had merit, the execution was just weird. 8 Chrysler Sebring Convertible, 2007 to 2010. The Chrysler Sebring Convertible represents everything that went wrong with American luxury car attempts in the 2000s. This car tried so hard to appear upscale that it ended up being a masterclass in fake luxury. The Sebring featured a retractable hardtop, which sounds impressive until you actually used it. The mechanism took nearly 30 seconds to operate, making you feel self-conscious every time you wanted to put the top down. The roof storage also ate up most of the trunk space, making the car less practical than a traditional soft-top convertible. But the real weirdness was in the details. The interior featured fake wood grain that looked like it came from a 1990s minivan, chrome plastic trim that fooled nobody, and leather that felt more like vinyl. Chrysler marketed this as a premium convertible that could compete with BMW and Mercedes, while using materials that wouldn't have been acceptable in a mid-range sedan. The styling was equally confused. The car tried to look sophisticated with its flowing lines and chrome accents, but the proportions were off and the details were cheap. It looked like a luxury car designed by someone who had only seen luxury cars in photographs. Sales reflected the confusion. The Sebring convertible sold poorly and became a frequent target for automotive journalists. It became the poster child for why you can't fake luxury. Customers can tell the difference, and critics definitely can. 7. Eagle Premier, 1988 to 1992. Number 7 is the Eagle Premier, a car so weird that most people don't even remember the brand it came from. This was Chrysler's attempt at building a sophisticated European-style sedan, and they achieved this by literally rebadging a French Renault 25. The Premier was part of Chrysler's short-lived Eagle brand, which was created to sell upscale cars through Jeep Eagle dealers. The idea was to offer something more sophisticated than typical American cars, and on paper, the Premier delivered. The car featured genuinely European engineering, independent suspension all around, sophisticated electronics for the time, and handling that was far more refined than typical American sedans. The interior was spacious and well-appointed, with materials and design that actually lived up to European standards. But American buyers in 1988 had no idea what to make of it. The Eagle brand was confusing. The Renault connection was concerning given French cars' reputation for reliability issues, and the styling was too subtle for American tastes. The Premier looked refined and understated when Americans wanted bold and flashy. The car is actually quite good. Motor Trend named it Car of the Year in 1988, praising its ride quality, handling, and interior space. But commercial success eluded it. Only about 75,000 Premiers were sold over its 4-year run, making it a rare sight even when new. Today, the Premier is remembered as an interesting footnote in automotive history, a genuinely good car that was too weird for its market. It represents Chrysler's brief experiment with European sophistication, an experiment that ended when the Eagle brand was discontinued in 1998. 6. Chrysler Crossfire, 2003 to 2008. The Crossfire looked like it was designed by someone who had only heard sports cars described over the phone. This car divided opinion from the moment it was revealed, with some people loving its aggressive, angular styling and others thinking it looked like it was trying way too hard. The design was certainly distinctive. The Crossfire featured sharp, angular lines, a long hood, a short deck, and proportions that seemed almost cartoonish. It looked like a sports car drawn by someone who understood the basic concept but had never seen a truly beautiful one. But here's where it gets really interesting. Underneath all that polarizing American styling was actually a Mercedes-Benz SLK platform. When Daimler Chrysler was formed in 1998, this kind of platform sharing became possible, and the Crossfire was one of the more visible results. The Mercedes connection meant the Crossfire was actually quite good to drive. It featured German engineering, solid build quality, and genuine sports car dynamics. The base model came with a 3.2-liter V6 producing 215 horsepower, while the SRT6 version got a supercharged engine making 330 horsepower. Performance was respectable. The SRT6 could hit 60 miles per hour in about 4.8 seconds and had a top speed of 155 miles per hour. The handling was sharp and precise thanks to that Mercedes platform, and the build quality was genuinely solid. But the styling remained divisive throughout its production run. About 76,000 Crossfires were built over 6 years, making it relatively rare today. It's become something of a cult classic. People either love its aggressive looks or hate them, but nobody ignores them. 5. Chrysler Pacifica, 2004 to 2008. Not the minivan. The original Pacifica was Chrysler's attempt at creating a luxury crossover before anyone really knew what a luxury crossover was supposed to be. This was 2004, remember, when SUVs were still truck-based and luxury wagons were almost extinct. The Pacifica was Chrysler's answer to the question nobody was asking. What if we made something that wasn't quite an SUV, wasn't quite a wagon, and wasn't quite a minivan? The result was genuinely confusing to look at, and even more confusing to market. The styling was love it or hate it from day one. The Pacifica featured a tall, upright stance, distinctive seat pillar treatment, and proportions that didn't quite match any existing category. It was too tall to be a wagon, too car-like to be an SUV, and too weird to be easily categorized. But underneath the unusual styling was actually a pretty decent vehicle. The Pacifica offered 3 rows of seating, all-wheel drive as an option, and a choice of V6 engines. The interior was spacious and well-appointed, with genuine luxury materials and thoughtful design details. The problem was market positioning. Chrysler couldn't figure out how to explain what the Pacifica was supposed to be, and customers couldn't figure out why they needed one. Sales were disappointing throughout its run, with only about 324,000 units sold over 5 model years. Ironically, the original Pacifica was ahead of its time. The luxury crossover segment it was trying to create would eventually become hugely popular, but in 2004, buyers weren't ready for it. Today, the entire luxury SUV market exists in the space the original Pacifica was trying to define. For Plymouth Prowler, 1997 to 2002. Number 4 is the Plymouth Prowler, and this car proves that sometimes production vehicles can be even weirder than concepts. The Prowler was a genuinely outrageous retro hot rod that looked like it had driven straight out of 1932, but was built with cutting-edge 1990s technology. The styling was pure fantasy, exposed front wheels, a long hood, minimal bodywork, and proportions that were more art than automotive design. It looked like what a 12-year-old would draw if asked to design the coolest car possible. The aluminum space frame construction was genuinely advanced, and the independent suspension was more sophisticated than most supercars of the era. But here's where it gets weird. This screaming hot rod that looked like it belonged at a drag strip only came with an automatic transmission. No manual option was ever offered, not even as a special edition or aftermarket conversion. For a car that was supposed to evoke the spirit of 1950s hot rods, this was automotive blasphemy. The engine was equally controversial. The Prowler used a 3.5-liter V6 producing 214 horsepower initially, later upgraded to 253 horsepower. While this was adequate, hot rod purists expected a V8, preferably something loud and aggressive. The V6 was smooth and efficient, but it didn't sound like what the car looked like it should sound like. Production was limited by design. Plymouth built about 11,702 Prowlers over its 6-year run. The car was hand-assembled in a special facility, and each one was essentially a limited edition. Originally sold under the Plymouth brand, the Prowler moved to Chrysler when Plymouth was discontinued in 2001. Today, the Prowler has developed a cult following. It's undeniably weird, but it's also undeniably cool in a way that few production cars have ever managed to be. 3 Dodge LA Femme, 1955 to 1956. The Dodge La Femme represents peak 1950s gender marketing taken to an almost parody level. In 1955, Dodge looked at the growing number of women drivers and decided they needed a car specifically designed for female customers. The result was automotive gender stereotyping, so extreme it's almost hard to believe it was real. The La Femme wasn't just painted in feminine colors, though the heather rose and sapphire white paint scheme was certainly eye-catching. What made it truly weird was the accessories. The car came with a matching purse, compact, lipstick case, cigarette case, and comb, all designed to coordinate with the car's interior color scheme. The purse was stored in a special compartment built into the dashboard, and everything was color-coordinated down to the smallest detail. The interior featured special upholstery with a floral pattern, and even the floor mats were designed to match the overall feminine theme. But here's what's really interesting. Underneath all the pink paint and matching accessories was actually a pretty decent car. The La Femme was based on the Dodge Custom Royal, which was a well-regarded mid-sized sedan with good performance and decent build quality. The marketing was something else entirely. Dodge's advertising emphasized that this was a car designed by women for women, though there's little evidence that women were actually involved in the design process. The ads focused on fashion, beauty, and coordinated accessories rather than performance or practicality. Only about 2,500 La Femmes are produced over 2 model years, making them incredibly rare today. The combination of unusual marketing, distinctive styling, and limited production has made surviving examples extremely valuable to collectors. 2 Chrysler TC by Maserati, 1989 to 1991. Number 2 is one of the strangest collaborations in automotive history, the Chrysler TC by Maserati. This car represents Chrysler's attempt to buy Italian credibility, and the result was as weird as it was expensive. The TC was essentially a heavily modified Chrysler LeBaron convertible, but with Italian assembly Maserati badges and a price tag that put it in Ferrari territory. Chrysler thought they could create instant exotic car credibility by partnering with Maserati, and they were spectacularly wrong. Each TC was hand-assembled by Maserati in Italy, which sounds impressive until you realize what you were actually getting. The car featured Chrysler engines, Chrysler electronics, and fundamentally Chrysler engineering, just with Italian leather and Maserati badges. The base model came with Chrysler's 2.2-liter turbocharged four-cylinder engine, the same one used in the much cheaper LeBaron. Later models offered a 3.0-liter V6, but even this was a Chrysler/Mitsubishi unit rather than anything Italian. The only genuinely Italian components were the bodywork and final assembly. But Chrysler priced the TC as if it were a genuine Italian exotic. At launch, it cost around $33,000, which was serious money in 1989. For comparison, a regular LeBaron convertible cost about half that, and you could buy a Chevrolet Corvette for less money. The market response was predictably brutal. Buyers weren't fooled by the Italian badges and hand assembly. They could see this was fundamentally a Chrysler underneath. Only about 7,300 TCs were built over 3 model years, making it one of Chrysler's biggest commercial failures. Today, the TC has developed a small but dedicated following among collectors of automotive oddities. It represents a fascinating example of how not to create a luxury car, and the limited production numbers have made surviving examples relatively rare. One Chrysler Turbine Car, 1963 to 1964. Taking the #1 spot is the Chrysler Turbine Car, and this wasn't just weird, it was revolutionary. This was a real production program where Chrysler built 55 jet-powered cars and actually lent them to regular families for real-world testing. The turbine engine was genuinely remarkable. It could run on almost any combustible liquid, gasoline, diesel, kerosene, jet fuel, and famously perfume. Chrysler actually demonstrated this by running one of the cars on Chanel No. 5, proving that the engine's fuel flexibility wasn't just marketing hype. The engine itself was almost maintenance-free. Traditional engines have hundreds of moving parts, but the turbine had essentially one, the turbine wheel itself. No pistons, no valves, no complex timing systems. In theory, it could run for hundreds of thousands of miles without major service. But the driving experience was unlike anything else on the road. The engine sounded like a giant vacuum cleaner or a small jet aircraft. Throttle response was delayed. You'd press the accelerator and wait a moment before the power arrived. And the fuel economy was terrible, especially in city driving. Chrysler selected 203 families across the United States to participate in the testing program. These weren't automotive journalists or engineers. They were regular people who used the cars for normal daily driving. The feedback was mixed but generally positive, with most testers praising the smooth operation and unique experience. The program ended in 1966, and most of the cars were destroyed. Only 9 survive today, making them among the rarest and most valuable automobiles ever built. The few that remain are worth millions of dollars and represent one of the most ambitious experiments in automotive history. The turbine car proved that revolutionary technology was possible, but it also showed why it didn't always make commercial sense. It remains the weirdest production car program ever attempted by any manufacturer.